It's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State. Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
Ground ball, right side. Cabrera will cut it off. Galarraga covers. He's out. No, he's safe.
Phoenix has the foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
DeBrincat gets it back to Gossett. Barron across now. King.
Save Raymond. They score! Raymond!
James Bond drops him and throw, and it's caught by St. Brown for a first down.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. Welcome one, welcome all. We are back. And while I wish I would be coming to you on a Victory Tuesday, being able to celebrate another Michigan State Final Four berth, unfortunately, it was not meant to be. And we'll get into the game itself. There's not really a whole lot to talk about the game itself, but there is a lot to talk about college basketball. And I guess this sort of overlaps not just college basketball, but college football as well, and sort of the state of college sports as we see them. So we'll get into that. That's probably going to, not probably, that's going to be the headline after we actually talk the sports aspect. But we got a great show. We got a lot to talk about. Tigers get their first win of the year last night after getting swept by the Dodgers, which was less than ideal. And we got to talk about a little Pistons stuff. Pistons, are the bad boys back? That's basically the question. But look, should be a good show. Looking forward to it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe, hit the like, leave a comment about anything. You can leave a comment about if you like my shirt. You like this shirt? It's a newer shirt. I hadn't worn it yet, and I was like, man, it's going to get to the point where it's going to be too warm out. As spring is starting to take form here in Michigan, I want to wear this new shirt that I bought a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Because my Red Wings shirt is apparently in the dirty clothes. I must have worn it already. So, yeah, no, I definitely wore it already. So it's in the dirty clothes. So I couldn't wear it to support the Red Wings who are playing tonight. And I don't have a long sleeve Tiger shirt. So this is my best option. And plus the Tigers are playing at, I think, midnight, actually. I think is when they're playing. So either way, let's just jump right into it then, because if you were one of the few people, because I know very few people actually do this, but if you were one of the few people who just went all chalk, all number one seeds in the Final Four for this year, you are having a grand old time. I was not one of those people. I did think it would be mostly number one seeds, or at least I did think there was going to be at least two number one seeds because I didn't think Florida was going to make it. And I didn't think Auburn was going to make it. But the number one seeds of this particular March Madness have shown why they are the number one seeds. Because, outside of maybe you say Florida played a close game against UConn, where that was very winnable for UConn. Duke is Duke. They never played a game where I ever felt any semblance that they were going to lose. They murdered Mount St. Mary's. They murdered Baylor. They murdered Arizona. Their closest game was a 7-point win. Their closest game was a 3-possession lead. They destroyed Alabama. It was not close. I guess Houston's kind of the weird one. If I had to pick, but even Houston, they pretty much have handled their business. They had a close game against Purdue that they won on a game winner. Either way, I guess, none of these number one seeds you're like, man, that team just feels fake. No, because they just are really good. And as far as the games over the past weekend, look, Michigan State played a gutsy game against Ole Miss. They got themselves into the Elite Eight. Another second half comeback. I was very impressed by the performance. I was very impressed by the fact that Izzo was able to coach those guys up and get them ready. I really thought that this was going to be a Michigan State team that could make another Final Four run. And I thought maybe, similar to that year, 2019, when they beat Duke with Zion Williamson, I thought maybe we were going to see something similar with Auburn and Johni Broome. Unfortunately, Johni Broome cares a lot more about basketball than Zion Williamson does. because he utterly dominated that whole game. And I know he went out like, look, okay, I'm not in the business of judging whether or not an injury is real or injury is not real. However, I am skeptical whenever it's, oh my gosh, he's hurt. He doesn't know if he's gonna play. He goes into the locker room and he just comes back in and immediately is playing as if he isn't hurt. Now that could just be painkillers. I'm not saying that Janai Broom was faking it by any means. I don't think he was. But it reminds me of the Paul Pierce wheelchair, or even recently the Cooper Flagg injury in the ACC tournament. Like, is it that you're actually really that hurt, or is it that you've been playing a lot and you need some rest? The game is pretty much out of hand. Oh, my arm hurts. I don't know. I'm not trying to disparage Janai Broom. He's a fantastic player. He should be a lottery pick for sure in the NBA, and he should be a player that you could build around, because his size, his shot, his ability to just make plays on his own. He's just a great player. So my initial question about this is, who are you even rooting for? Because normally whenever I watch March Madness, and assuming Michigan State is not deep in it, I'm kind of into the underdogs. As much as I don't think they'll win, it's at least kind of an interesting story. But given the fact that technically none of these teams are really underdogs, I mean, obviously one team is going to be favored over the other. I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, you know what? If we're going to have the best teams, I want to see Janai Broom versus Cooper Flagg. I want to see like number 1 pick versus number 2 pick, basically. Like that's what I'm interested in. So, and I don't know if I were, a CBS corporate, guy who's just looking for ratings, I have to think that's the biggest matchup. Like, that you have 2 of the biggest players in college basketball, both figuratively and literally. And it's Duke, which is a great college basketball brand. As much as I hate to admit that, because I don't like Duke, they're a great college basketball brand. Auburn, well, probably not traditionally seen as a college basketball brand, is still an SEC school. So they have that. And Janai Broom is really must-see TV, at least if you're into basketball and college basketball specifically. So that's what I'm rooting for at this point. I guess you could, if you want like nobody to be satisfied, I guess you say Houston versus Florida. I guess that wouldn't make me satisfied. I represent everyone in this instance. I don't like Florida. To me, like, yeah, they're good, obviously. They're the number 1 seed for a reason. But I just can't shake that UConn game out of my head. And maybe it's just, Dan Hurley and, reigning champion at that point. Maybe it's just that. But I can't shake it out of my mind, because Maryland, them beating Maryland, okay, whatever. I never really thought Maryland was all that good to begin with. Them, I don't know. Maybe I'm focusing on one game. I didn't watch a whole lot of Florida basketball, but this just feels like an Auburn similar, not exactly like the Michigan State game, because I think Florida is better than Michigan State, obviously. But I don't think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be, Florida running away with it, or Auburn running away with it, for that matter. I think Auburn will win, but I don't know. I can't get that UConn game out of my head. I had UConn going to the Final Four because I didn't want to bet against Dan Hurley, and now I'm upset that it didn't happen. And I know what you're going to say. Why would you take an 8 seed to go to the Final Four? Shut up. Have you ever considered stop speaking right now? Yeah, I don't have anything to say about Houston, because I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't know who anybody on Florida's team, to be perfectly honest, but I couldn't tell you anybody on Houston's team. I don't even know who's their coach. All I know is they're the Cougars and they wear red. That's the only thing I know about Houston. And it's in Texas. And the Texans play there. And the Astros play there. Those are the things I know about Houston. So either way, I think the people who say, I just want good games, they kind of get what they want, because you're probably going to get some good games. Although, frankly, again, just looking at the scores and the few games that I've watched of Houston this year in the tournament, I feel like Duke is just going to roll them, because that's what they're doing to everybody. Okay. Like you can't fault me for thinking that. They did it to Mount St. Mary's. Did anybody really believe? They did it to Baylor. They did it to Arizona. They did it to Alabama. Alabama, probably in any other, if there wasn't a Cooper Flagg and a Janai Broom in existence, Alabama certainly could have been a number 1 seed. I think they ended up being a number 2 seed. Like, I'm just saying, I'm noticing a pattern, and it's scaring me as somebody who doesn't like Duke. And I'm sure all the North Carolina fans are also not liking this. So either way, you get the 4 best teams, allegedly. So we'll see if this actually results in 2, I guess 3 of the best games, because you'll have the 2 games in the national championship game. Because this is what I've been told, is that you don't want the Cinderella stories, because then you have bad games later. It's like, well, okay. If Duke, I'm just saying, if Duke wins this game by 15, then I'm gonna be a very upset man, and I won't be able to do much about it. I'll just be upset, and you don't want to see me when I'm angry. You've probably seen me when I'm angry. Look up on some of my most popular videos. You'll see me when I'm angry. So there's that. But on a sort of unrelated note, it's outside of the tournament, but it is, I guess, Michigan State and just college sports related. I wanted to get into this because it kind of became a conversation today. Transfer portal has been open for, I think, a couple of weeks at this point. I think it was open in the week going into the Sweet 16. I could be wrong about that. And today, Michigan State, unfortunately, has lost at least 2 players so far. Xavier Booker was one, whom, okay, he didn't play a single minute during the March Madness tournament, which basically told me what Izzo thinks of him truly, which is that he's just not very good and a very disappointing player. He's a 5-star recruit. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be, essentially one of these Zach Edey type players. He never really developed a good shot from deep. He never really embraced his role as someone who can just drive to the basket and be a rim protector. So he's going to be out. Okay. The one that surprised me genuinely was Trey Holloman. Trey Holloman, who seemed to have that Spartan dog mentality, who really seemed to, he had been at Michigan State for, at this point, I think 3 years. I believe he's a junior. So I was surprised by that, but not to be overtaken, I guess. Trey Donaldson out in Michigan, he also enters the portal. And then I'm like, wait, what? First of all, it's weird there's 2 Treys. It's kind of odd. But secondly, these are 2 guys who helped each of their respective teams go on tournament runs, help both of these teams win the Big Ten in the regular season and the tournament respectively. You can't say that it's not a culture thing. I mean, clearly, Trey Holloman, at least, I can't exactly speak to Donaldson, but clearly, Trey Holloman loved Michigan State, loved playing for Tom Izzo, never seemed like he was, selfish with the basketball. I mean, he went from starter to bench guy because Jace Richardson emerged, and he had no problem, seemingly. And yet, off he goes, seemingly. I mean, there's nothing stopping him from coming back, but this whole transferring, NIL, all this stuff, I know it's not news, but this is just absurd. Okay, like it's one thing to say, all right, the players are making the schools a lot of money. They should be allowed to be in a car commercial, or they should be allowed to get money based on their likeness being used in NCAA football, or, they should be able to sell their in-game shoes or in-game worn jerseys or signed gear. They can go to, I don't know, you can go to the local Wendy's and sign hats for people for, $10 a pop. I don't know. It's one thing to say that guys can do that. It's another thing that basically at the end of every year, any given player, whether he's a starter, in the case of, I believe Donaldson was a starter. Holloman was not a starter. I could be wrong about that. Michigan fan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Or, you can, I don't even remember where I was going with this. Whether you're a starter or you're a bench guy, you're going to be like, well, I like $1 million, please. What happened to this just being, it's just for, the superstar player. It's just for Reggie White. It's just for, I was going to say Victor Wembanyama, but he never played in college. It's just for Devin Booker. It's just for Kevin Durant. Those kind of players in college that obviously are, their jerseys are being sold, not necessarily with the name on it, but maybe, whatever. It's one thing if it's that. But look, no disrespect to Trey Holloman. I love Trey. He's not even an NBA player. Okay, he'd probably be a G League player if he just left in the draft right now. Okay, that's just purely from the size aspect. He's just not tall enough to play in the NBA. Furthermore, how can we say that now if you are just a solid guard, like a good player, coming off the bench, that basically, regardless of, all of the emotion, clearly that was there, all of the, recruitment that was there from Izzo's standpoint to find Holloman and bring him in, regardless of all of that, you don't pay me, I'm gone. I know that loyalty is not seen in a lot of ways as a virtue in the modern world, especially in sports, as it once was. But doesn't this just look like total scumbaggery? Like, if Trey Holloman goes to, I don't know, let's just throw out a university. If Trey Holloman goes to be a starting guard at Northwestern, I don't know, as the first school that came to mind, is he really going to help his resume? I mean, the most recent example I think of was AJ Hoggard. Okay, AJ Hoggard had bright spots at certain points, but overall he wasn't very good. He transferred to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt didn't do anything this year. All right, Vanderbilt made the tournament and lost. That was Vanderbilt's tournament experience. But yet, this player, AJ Hoggard, seems to believe that he is far better than he actually is. And again, no disrespect to Trey, but he is simply not a $1 million player. If he was Cooper Flagg, if he was Janai Broom, if he was, Devin Booker, if he was any of these, if he was Zion Williamson back in the day, or even heck, if he was Cassius Winston, all right, then maybe we can have a conversation about, okay, we're going to sign you to this contract, or we're going to give you, a promotion where you make this money. That's the other thing. It's not a contract exactly. It's basically a handshake deal where, oh, sure, yeah, I'll be committed to your university. And then as soon as the season ends, it's like, yeah, actually, I'd like a 5x raise. So that $1 million is going to have to be $5 million. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's one thing, again, if you are one of these all-time greats, a guy that you could see, winning Big Ten or ACC or College Player of the Year, whatever the case may be. It's one thing if it's that. But it's not that largely. I mean, every year you see guys, you're like, wait, why is he entering the portal? Like, I remember just last year or a couple of years ago at Michigan State, Noah Kim, the quarterback for Michigan State, enters the portal. Where the hell does Noah Kim think he's going to go play quarterback and be good? like he's either just going to go to a smaller university where his degree is, I mean, not that the degree really is doing much for them anyway, but he's going to a smaller, less prestigious university, and he's going to be playing football for a worse team. He's like, I understand that these guys are like, look, I don't know if I'm going to play pro. Most of them probably know that they're not going to play pro. I need to make the most amount of money that I can get. I totally understand where they're coming from. I get that perspective 100%. But the fact that the team basically is held hostage and has to pay up to whatever ridiculous demands these players hold is absurd. We wouldn't hold our own pro leagues to this standard. Like, if next year, Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions just said, you know what, actually, I know I'm getting paid however many millions he's getting paid. I'd actually like twice as much. And if you don't pay me that, I'm going to leave in free agency. It's like, that's not how this works. You sign a contract. We get you for a certain amount of time. And then, when the contract ends, we'll talk about it. And with college, there is no such thing. There is no backing for the organization, for the university to say, okay, we're going to give you this much money. And because we're giving you this much money, you're going to stick around for 1, 2, 3, even 4 years. Okay? Like, I don't think that's too much to ask. If you want to, be paid like professionals, if you want to, have guarantees like professionals, well, then you gotta live in the real world and not just say, okay, I want $1 million because because that's what I want. It's like, yeah, I want $1 million too, but unfortunately, if I went to my manager and said, hey, pay me $1 million or else I'm leaving. See ya. There you go. I'm out. Like, and I think a lot of these schools probably feel the same way about a lot of these players, and they get stuck in this endless void of, I need to go to this other school because they will pay me because they're desperate or they don't care. Like they're just going to spend money to spend money. The whole thing is just getting ridiculous. And not that it wasn't already ridiculous, but it's especially ridiculous when you really see the reality of it, I guess. Who knows whether Cohen Carr is going to stick around? Who knows whether Jace Richardson is going to stick around? Not that he would transfer, but that he might, commit for the draft. Year to year, you're just not going to know what your team is going to look like. And I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think that is going to be a sustainable metric for these sports. Because at a certain point, people are just going to start turning off. They're just going to say, I don't know who any of these guys are. So short of them being really amazing and good, short of it being, Auburn or Duke at number 1 seed, like one of the best teams in the country, people just really aren't going to watch. And, there's only so many of those best teams in the country. Most teams are not all that good. And you might have, Steph Curry at Davidson, and that's the only reason you watch your Davidson basketball. Or, if it's Michigan State, it's, you might not win a national title, but you like watching Tyson Walker, or you like watching Cassius Winston, or you like watching, I was going to say Aaron Henry, but that I actually didn't really like watching Aaron Henry that much. That was actually a darker time for Michigan State. But either way, that's pretty much my rant. That's what I had to say. I'm curious what people think. Do they like I can't imagine people really like this situation. But, if you do, I'd be curious to hear what you like. Why? It just doesn't make much sense to me. And maybe I'm just being an old man, which is entirely possible. I'm only 25, but I got the mind and the heart of a 75-year-old man. So. We got the Red Wings pregame show on now. I thought they were on at 7. I guess because they're in St. Louis, it's an 8 o'clock start. By the way, the Red Wings are still technically in it, and I hate them for it. We're entering the month of April. The Red Wings, I believe, are 3 points out of the playoffs. But furthermore, if they only have 8 games left, I think. Or maybe they have 9, maybe they have 9, including this one. We very well could see, similar to last year, where it's like, we're watching the final game to see if they can actually get it done. Okay, here we go. Here's the standings here, I think. This is the weirdest looking graph. Yeah. Okay, so the Red Wings, they're 3 points out. Montreal's in that second wildcard spot with 77 points. Meanwhile, Ottawa, the team that apparently rebuilds never end, except for them, they're at 84 points. They're pretty solidly in. But the Canadiens are up 1-0 over the Panthers. So there's that. The Blue Jackets are also up 1-0 over the Preds. No score between the Islanders and Lightning. But the Wings have 74. They need to get to 77. Basically, they just got to win out. That's the only way for me to jump back into this Red Wings team is just go and be the team you were when you were winning 7 straight. Do that. Because otherwise, I don't care. I've already said my piece on the Red Wings. You can go watch some of the clips I've uploaded on the Red Wings. I'm done with them. I'm done with Steve Yzerman. At this point, I kind of want them to not make it just so that we can get closer and closer to getting rid of Steve Yzerman. That's my feeling. But, hey, he did score that goal against St. Louis back in 96. And who can forget that? I can forget that. I wasn't alive. But do you remember when he won the Stanley Cup in 2002? No, I don't. I was 3. I'm sure it was happening while I was around. I was probably very busy playing with my Thomas the Tank Engine trains. Those were a lot of fun. Anyway, this is a sports show in case you're just joining. All right. So, because we're on basketball, I guess I'll figure out stick with the NBA. So, let's talk a little NBA then. Pistons had something of a weird week. Let me actually pull up their schedule here. I like the ESPN schedule just because it's aesthetically the most pleasing. So, last Tuesday, they played San Antonio. They won that game. Not a big surprise. Then on Friday night, they play not the best defensive game. They gave up 122 points. But without Cade Cunningham, they score 133 points and beat the Cavaliers. And I was like, whoa, okay, didn't expect that. Tim Hardaway had 32 points. Like, okay, didn't think you had that in you. But then they go on the road, they lose to Minnesota. Okay, not great. Minnesota's probably game-to-game basis. They're probably not as good as you, but they've been without Cade Cunningham since I think that Dallas game was the last time Cade played, which ironically they lost that game. Yeah, he had 35 points that game, and they still lost somehow. But the story of the week for the Pistons was not, in fact, the winning against Cavaliers, which I thought was going to be the story. I thought that I was going to be able to say, hey, look, the Pistons without Cade, they've shown an ability to beat some of these good teams. But then something happened in the Minnesota game. The Pistons got into a little bit of a brawl. Now, when I say they got into a brawl, I mean they did not intend to get into a brawl, but a brawl occurred to them. So you can go back and watch the video. I don't know if anybody can really dispute that this is what happened. This is just how it looks on the video to me. Ron Holland goes to drive a layup, I believe, or he's playing. I can't remember I think Ron Holland was driving to get a layup, and he gets fouled going up. Naz Reid then wags his finger in his face like this, and then starts pointing at him, and Ron is kind of like ignoring him. That's what it looks like. He's like, okay, like, why are you acting like a psycho, Naz Reid? And then Dante DiVincenzo says, hold my beer, and just gets right in Holland's face. And he's like, get the F off of me. And then DiVincenzo does a wrestling move and just throws him to the ground, grabbing his neck. The whole brawl starts emerging. Isaiah Stewart's involved. Marcus Sasser's involved. The coaches are involved. They both get ejected. There's a total of 7 ejections. I believe it was Reid, DiVincenzo, Holland, Sasser, Stewart, and then the 2 coaches. So 7 total ejections. And my whole question about this thing is, because I don't think that the Pistons are intending on this happening, but are they kind of just being the bad boys again? Like, this is one of those things where the Pistons are not instigating this. This has been something of my contention. The Pistons might retaliate. They might, show a little bit of feistiness and physicality. They're not a finesse team. I don't think anybody would call them that. They're not a, shoot a bunch of threes, style points, think back of like the Rockets in 2018, something like that. They're not that kind of a team. They are a drive to the basket, lob passes. They're more akin, if there's any team you can comp them to, I'd say they're closer to the Lob City Clippers than they are to, say some of these other modern teams that shoot a lot of 3 balls. Not that the Pistons don't shoot the 3, but especially without Cade Cunningham, they don't really have a lot of 3-point shooting potential there outside of Hardaway and Beasley. Either way, the Pistons play a physical brand of basketball. And I think that basically we're in an NBA world right now where that brand of basketball is just not played. So a lot of these guys, whether it's vets or even some of the young players, they don't like it when you got guys driving to the basket and forcing contact and trying to draw fouls and playing tough defense and getting in your face and getting fired up. And so these players, who I would call sensitive, I don't think there's really any I don't think there's really much else to say about that. Like, they get intimidated, they get upset, and then fights break out. And then the spin is, oh my gosh, the Pistons are always getting into fights. It's always the Pistons. It's the same sort of thing. I know it's not totally equivalent. It's like when you have a team that, I'm trying to think of like a college example, but it's like when you have a team where, people don't like them, for whatever reason. They're good, they play a style that is annoying, whatever the case may be. And other teams kind of push them around because they don't like that they're good. And then a fight breaks out naturally because the team is trying to defend itself. That's what the Pistons are. I don't think that they're really yes, does Isaiah Stewart get fired up probably easier than a lot of other teams or a lot of other players? Sure. I don't think that's untrue. I don't think that's unfair. But the fact that these fights are breaking out, I think, has more to do with the fact that the Pistons, number one, are just winning. So they're playing a brand of basketball that is successful, at least in so much as they're going to make the playoffs. And secondly, because teams don't like it when they have to play physical or when guys are driving to the basket or what have you. And all of that was what I was basically going to talk about. Until today, the news of the suspensions due to the fight were revealed. DiVincenzo and Naz Reid, I believe, were the only two players for the Wolves to get suspended. Both of them get 1 game. On the Pistons, Marcus Sasser and Ron Holland both get a game. Isaiah Stewart, however, gets 2 games. Now, is this, the most 2 games is really not a big deal. 1 game is really not a big deal. However, help me to understand this. Isaiah Stewart did not start the fight. Isaiah Stewart, from what I can tell, didn't do anything any more egregious than what DiVincenzo did. It wasn't like, Isaiah Stewart just punched Naz Reid in the face or something, or, sucker punched a coach or something. Isaiah Stewart gets his punishment because there is a mythos about Isaiah Stewart that basically all he does is fight people, which is just not true. I mean, you can just look at the stats and the season he's having right now. He's playing at an all defensive level right now. He's a really good rim protector, and he's really hard to dunk on too. Just go, if you don't believe me, go look up Isaiah Stewart defensive highlights. Now, again, that might be something of a misnomer because most people don't like defensive highlights. Either way, Isaiah Stewart is not just, meathead looking for someone to punch. The Sasser and the Holland thing, okay, fine. You're involved in a fight, you get suspended. And obviously Stewart was involved too, he gets suspended. I understand. What I don't understand, again, is Isaiah Stewart gets involved in a fight that he did not start, he gets 2 games. DiVincenzo starts a fight that he was not even, it was an interaction between Naz Reid and Ron Holland. DiVincenzo was not relevant. He just comes in, guns a-blazing, and just starts firing. He's like Danny DeVito. He just started blasting. And he gets 1 game? I saw the man, like a psycho, grab Ron Holland by the neck and throw him to the ground into a cameraman. That's not at least 2 games? That's not at least equal to whatever Isaiah Stewart is ostensibly being accused of doing? I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. And it doesn't surprise me because, again, it is just kind of the NBA for whatever reason. Through every time the Pistons have ever been good, there is just this semblance, this feeling that, well, the Pistons are doing it wrong. However they are good now, well, they're doing it wrong. They should stop doing it the way they're doing it, even though it's successful, even though fans like it, even though players want to play for them. They for whatever reason, they don't care. They're like, no, it's not good. We don't want toughness in our game. We don't want personality. We don't want, ratings in the NBA. We want, boring, lifeless, 3-point shooting, Boston shooting 65 million threes a game. That's what we want. Because that really, puts butts in the seats, I'm sure. But look, down the stretch here, it's not like things get particularly easy for the Pistons. They got a road game tomorrow against Oklahoma City. They got a road game on Friday against Toronto. Then they got a homestand for the last 4? No, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4, and then they end the season on the road. Again, they got Memphis, they got Sacramento, they got New York, they got Milwaukee twice. Okay, none of those home games outside, I guess Sacramento is probably pretty winnable. New York, Memphis, Milwaukee, all 3 of those teams are in the playoffs right now. And Oklahoma City tomorrow night on ESPN, by the way. So you'll get, if you are not in the area, you'll be able to tune into a national broadcast for the Pistons. And they got a couple of NBA TV games as well, in case you have NBA TV. Either way, the Pistons, I think, are being tested in a way. I think there is, it's kind of like a two-way deal where the NBA doesn't like it. Clearly, they don't like Isaiah Stewart. They have this view of him that all he is a fighter. And the Pistons getting more punished for being involved in a fight than for actually starting one. On the other hand, the media world, they kind of like it. They might not like that it's kind of boring, quote unquote, boring basketball, which I disagree with. But they do like that this is a gutsy team, that at any given moment, another team might not appreciate the physicality, might not appreciate the fieriness. And, hopefully Cade Cunningham will be back soon. You have the gutsiness, you have the grit, if you will, but you also have that superstar player in Cade Cunningham. So, we'll see, because no Cade, no Tobias right now. And obviously, Jaden Ivey is probably not coming back for the rest of the year at this point. The Pistons, I think, are not intentionally trying to become the bad boys. Now, to be fair, the bad boys didn't try to become the bad boys either. They got that label put onto them, and they just embraced it. So I got a feeling that sort of thing could be happening right now again. That the NBA, other players, other teams, they're just putting this label onto the team. And the Pistons are going to have to either embrace that and just say, you know what, we're going to be tough, we're going to be physical, we're not going to care what other teams think, we're not going to care what the NBA thinks, as long as we're not breaking the rules. We're going to win the way we are going to win. And I think Bickerstaff has that message. I think the players love that message. And as a fan, I'm all for it. If Bickerstaff is preaching that to his team, to be physical, to be tough, to get in the other team's face a little bit, that sounds good to me. That sounds like winning Pistons basketball to me. It's interesting. This is unrelated. I was just looking at the little ESPN, and they give a little ticket, like tickets as low as tomorrow night's game in Oklahoma City. They got tickets as low as $9. Where are they sitting you? Like $9? No shot. It's probably like $9 plus like 80% fees. Parking is $100 billion. $9. Get out of here. Apparently, the most expensive game, as far as ticket price, it's against Toronto on the road. That's ridiculous. Where are they coming up with these numbers? Anyway, there's a lot of messages in the chat here, so I'm gonna read through some of these. Pistons 2-0 against the Lakers, annoying as hell. That's too bad. Mize is pitching tonight. I'm not a believer in him as of right now. Well, it'll be his first start of the year. They're just showing it right now. He pitched a really good spring. I think similar to Spencer Torkelson. I think he's on his last step. Like is his last chance to really show out that he is worthwhile as a pitcher. I think he's got the stuff. I think he's got the potential. I'm not gonna say I'm a full-fledged believer because he hasn't pitched yet, but he's trending in the right direction from what he did in spring training. I'll say that. If he can stay healthy, then we're good. If he can't, have fun pitching for the Diamondbacks or something. Like, Harvey batting over 300. Now's the time to trade. That's right. His value is never going to be higher. Trade Javi Baez right now. Come on now. Hope these rumors about Jace Richardson staying are true. Yeah, honestly, that would be devastating if he enters the portal. I mean, especially, his dad went to Michigan State. If he enters the portal, that would be devastating. I guess if he goes to the draft, I'd be like, okay, I get it, but also, damn, man, like, can guys really not stay for more than a year? Like, I love Jace, but I wouldn't take him in the first round of the NBA draft. That's just me. But if we can beat the Thunder tomorrow, I'll be completely shocked, especially if there's still no Cade Tobias and Ivy. Agree. Here's the next one. 25 Takeover can't be a brick salesman, which would help a potential win. Yeah, he has not been good this year. I didn't really ever believe in him all that much to begin with. I know a lot of people thought he was one of the better moves of Troy Weaver, but I was like, I don't care. He's a terrible GM, and he's probably going to lose the trade. I don't even remember how we got him, but yeah, I never really had much faith in him. I think he's someone I expected to be in the similar position that Hardaway and Beasley are, where he's a veteran guy that can either come off the bench or be a starter, and he's done that a few times. Yeah, he comes off the bench. I don't know if he's ever started. He might have started earlier in the year, but yeah, he's just not that good. Like he's fine, but he's not that good. But not consistency like Hardaway okay, yeah, that's what you're saying. More the draft for Richardson. Yeah, I like Richardson. I think he's a really good player. I think he could use another year in college. Now that's just me. I'm not the one getting whispers from his agent that, teams are, the Memphis Grizzlies or, whomever is, thinking of drafting you if you're available. And they'll give you, a $1 million deal. I was surprised when Max Christie left and he ended up getting drafted, and now he's actually okay in Dallas, although his only known what's the word? Achievement? I don't know if that's right. He will only probably forever be known as being a piece in the Luka Doncic trade. Man, I could go on a rant about this, but I'm gonna try to stop myself. But I have to just say that, like, the more and more that I see of that trade, just the fact that the Lakers are where they are, the fact that the Mavericks, like, it is easily one of the worst trades in the history of sports. Like, it is, and people might say it's crazy for me to say this. It's on the same level as Babe Ruth getting traded to the Yankees. Like, it is that level of absolute incompetency and absurdity. Like, the fact that this happened is beyond me. Like, I can't think it. Like, maybe you say Herschel Walker. Like, but that was like an overpay trade. And it wasn't like Herschel Walker was terrible. Herschel Walker was still a good player. It was just a complete overpay. Maybe Ricky Williams. I'm trying to think of other terrible trades. Like, a trade where a good player gets given away, essentially. Giancarlo Stanton? I don't even remember what was involved in that trade. You might say bring it back to the Tigers. You have Justin Verlander. That was a pretty awful trade. Max Scherzer walked in free agency. I guess the most comparable recent example, at least in baseball, is Shohei Ohtani walking in free agency. Like, the fact that the Angels literally got nothing for the greatest baseball player of my lifetime, that's crazy. That's just like that is absolutely, it's like a joke. Like that is something that only you could do in a video game. Jay Rich could be a second round guy, but I have a feeling he would be a guy that'll develop in the G League, then be called up like Max Christie. If he stays and keeps developing his game, that could make him at least a guaranteed draft pick, second round and a very late first. Also, with all these guys leaving, Jace is arguably the best player. Oh, he was already the best player in MSU. He was already at this point. I like Carr, but Jace Richardson is the best player in MSU right now. And he was before the transfers. He was after. I guess the thing is I guess Izzo's just gonna have to replace those guys. Booker is not gonna be hard to replace because you just get a traffic cone and it's pretty much the same. But Holloman, we talked about it earlier. That's one that just, it baffles the mind. Like, what are you supposed to do? To all the people who say, "Well, just have a better culture, just have a better," like, what are you? We have the culture, obviously. Michigan State does, and Holloman knows about it. It is literally just pay him money. It is just bribe players to come play for you. Like that's what it seems to be. It's just, hey, I know you're not, a superstar or anything, but I don't care. We're going to pay you like you are one. So, all right. So, I'll talk about this. So I didn't expect to have to talk about this. Actually, okay. We'll start with just talking about the Tigers briefly, and then I'll get into this. So first things first. Tigers start with a tough opening weekend. They go 0-3 against the Dodgers. They finally get a win last night against the Mariners. The offense has been playing pretty well. And my thought was, okay, are the Dodgers just really good? Evidence is showing, yes, the Dodgers are just really good. But the other thing is, I'm a little, and maybe this is just, it's too early. I understand. I'm not, jumping off a ledge. I'm a little underwhelmed by the pitching. Like, Jackson Jobe, he was fine. Rookie, I'm not going to, he definitely, I'll give him more time. Tarek Skubal, fine. It wasn't the typical Tarek Skubal dominance that we were expecting. Again, it's the Dodgers, so what are you supposed to do? But even like outside of that, Flaherty, I think he pitched a pretty good game, but the bullpen, that was so good last year that really helped propel this team, it's showing a little bit of, I guess, growing pains. And I'm willing to say, okay, it's early, let it kind of cook a little bit, let the pitchers kind of get used to it. It seems like even early on, the offense for a lot of teams is just very potent. So maybe that's just that. Got to give it a little bit of time. So, I'm willing to wait it out at the very least. So there's that. The other thing is obviously Gleyber Torres goes down, which is, literal injury to insult, because now you lose 3 straight and then you lose Gleyber Torres, who is one of your offseason acquisitions. But Justin Henry Malloy comes up and he plays really well. So ironically, after the first few games, I'm far less concerned than I am about the offense. I'm far less concerned about the offense than I am about the pitching. Now, that's sort of its own thing. I'm not saying that everything is awesome and that we have the greatest offense ever. That's not what I'm saying. All of this is leading into, well, either way, this is just 4 games in, so things could change rather quickly. But that's not primarily what I wanted to talk about. But I did want to acknowledge the Tigers a little bit because that's my team. The thing I want to talk about is this. The story that has taken hold of the baseball world and even beyond the baseball world, people in just the sports world in general. The torpedo bats. All right. So basically, my understanding of the torpedo bats is it was developed by some genius scientist out of Harvard or something. Whatever. And basically, all it does is it reallocates where some of the wood in the bat goes, so that basically you have, more wood where the ball is typically getting hit. I don't really know, but these are not, contrary to popular belief, these are not new. They have been used before. They've been used in spring training before by other teams, and currently they're being used by more than just one team. There's a lot of sentiment that, oh my gosh, it's just the Yankees. They developed this crazy. Well, yeah, the guy from the Yankees developed it, I suppose, or pushed for it. But, Ellie De La Cruz on the Reds was using it. I believe the Braves put it in order. I remember hearing that. All of this torpedo bat nonsense aside, all the not the politics, all the lore behind what it is. The one thing that I have been driven crazy about, and this is not coming from a Yankee fan, I have no sympathy largely for the Yankees. The people saying this is cheating are just plain wrong. like first of all, forget the team that's utilizing it, okay? For a second. Just forget that. Let's say it was the Marlins, okay? Forget whoever it was. The fact of the matter is, it is not against the rules. Let me say it one more time. It is not against the rules. Let me say it one more time. It is not against the rules. So if you don't like it, then you have 2 options. Option number 1, cope and seethe. Option number 2, start using them. That's how I see it. It's the same thing with this tush push. And everybody who makes fun of the Packers for being soft and for being losers, for wanting to get it banned, and for all those other 16 teams who voted in favor of it being banned, all of those teams, and if the Lions voted in favor of banning it, I'm going to say that about them. They are losers, okay? They are sad, pathetic losers who are blaming the rules or blaming some play that is not universally successful anyway because another team is very good at utilizing it. If the torpedo bats were so good, if they were like the I don't remember the episode of Jimmy Neutron, but the one episode where they had baseball bats and mitts that made them way better at baseball than they actually were. If that's what the torpedo bat is, why isn't everybody using them? Why isn't Aaron Judge using it? Aaron Judge, already a very good baseball player. Why wouldn't he be using it? Isn't it interesting, too, that all the players that are, hitting home runs, that are hitting just better in general, isn't it interesting that they're all, like, good players? You know what's funny? You don't see, I'm trying to think of some random bad players. You don't see Daz Cameron. I don't even know if he's still in the league. You don't see Daz Cameron starting to rake home runs with the torpedo bat. Javi Baez, he has yet to get the torpedo bat, so I'll hold off. But if Javi Baez had a torpedo bat, would he suddenly be, Lou Gehrig? Somehow I doubt it. Somehow I just don't think that'll be the case. So this all just comes down to this. You can't say something is cheating if it is not against the rule. That is literally the definition of cheating. Like it's as stupid as if I said to you, you know what I hate? I hate that, the Tigers, they got better quality mitts than the other teams, and so that's why they're winning. And they're cheating because their mitts are so much better quality. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, maybe they have better quality. Are they against the? Well, no, they're not banned or anything. They're just really good quality. Like, then buy good mitts. Like, if these bats are the miracle worker, then buy the bats. Seems very simple to me. It seems like a pretty 1-to-1. If these are the magic bats that make it so that people who can't hit can suddenly hit. If you can't hit, go get the bat. Not that long ago, I was reading a book. I don't remember who it was by, but it was basically a book about the history of some of the worst players in all of baseball. The history of, from bad managers, bad ownership, players who did a bunch of steroids but still suck, or players who cheated otherwise. Like, I read these books, and throughout the book, you encounter these stories of guys, specifically guys who were caught on doing steroids, who still sucked. And I think people have a bit of a misnomer for what some of these, even steroids do. Steroids don't make it so that you don't strike out as much as you normally would. Steroids don't make it so that you draw more walks, although maybe inadvertently they would. What they do is make it so that your single is now actually a triple, or your double is now actually a home run. And any injury that you might sustain, instead of it being a 60-day IL, is now a 30-day IL. All of that to say, the bats don't make it so that you go from hitting below the Mendoza line or, with a 500 OPS to Barry Bonds, but they do probably make it so that you go from, decent to maybe a little better. I don't know. It's not going to take you from terrible player to amazing player, but it might provide some boost. I don't know. Like, these bats have been around for a while. I tend to disagree that the source of some players failing is because he's not using the right baseball bat. So all of this is to say, if you think these torpedo bats are so ridiculous, they're unfair, the Yankees should be ashamed of themselves, why don't you just get better pitching? You ever think of that? You know what makes it so that the bat doesn't matter? When you have good swing and miss. When you can locate the strike zone. Like, the bat doesn't make your eye at the plate any better. I don't know if this is a shock to you, but you don't suddenly become a really good hitter because you got a new baseball bat. Let me tell you, if I had one of these torpedo bats, I still wouldn't be a good baseball player. All right? If you gave one of these baseball bats to Michael Jordan back in the day, he still wouldn't be a good baseball player. So, to all the whiners, I have no other way of putting it, all the loser mentality people who want to say that the Yankees are cheating or that the bats should be illegal or whatever. Whether they should or shouldn't be illegal, it will be up to the players to the players reps, to the players union and the ownership, presumably when they come to a collective bargaining agreement, or if Major League Baseball just says outright, all right, we're done. We're just going to get rid of it. Short of that happening, it's not cheating. So don't complain about it. Just beat it. Same thing with the tush push. Green Bay's a bunch of losers. Sorry, I just wanted to point that out there because it's true. Right. Yeah, the juice balls. This was another. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Major League Baseball was testing different, baseballs at that point, so I'm sure it had in effect. But like, the thing is, at least with the juice balls, it's not like they were giving only juice balls to the Red Sox when they were playing the Yankees or something. Like, it's not like they were just giving them one side. It's like, hey, Padres, why don't you guys throw with these juice balls to the Dodgers? Why don't you just do that? And then, we'll switch the ball. Like, no, it's like they just juiced a bunch of balls and, they gave them out to games and tried to see what happened. So, bats are too expensive for Chris Illich to buy. It might be true. It might be true. He needs to be able to afford to put crazy puffs in Comerica Park. So, he needs to be able to do that. Get Javier Baez a torpedo bat. He did have a couple of hits last night, I believe. He had a bases clearing double, I think. I'm not saying that Javi Baez is back, guys. I'm just saying what do you want me to do? Bury the guy when he had a good game? Like, I can't do that. I'll bury him when he plays a terrible game, which inevitably will happen. And he did most of the series against the Dodgers. He played terribly, but he only played, I think, one game. Anyway. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, no, we already said that. Booker, we still have Cooper and Kohler, and Izzo can probably find another center in the portal. Normand barely played. Maybe Tang or the two incoming freshmen. Yeah, I mean, Normand, when I saw that I was like, dude, you literally never played. Like, this would be the equivalent of if Nick Sanders went into the portal. It's like, dude, I don't even know who you are. Anyway. Holloman, you could say Jace is the replacement, but still can find a depth. Yeah, I mean, like, he's not really a replacement because he was playing on the team at the same time. So for Jace took his role in the starting position. That's true, but you're going to need more depth for sure. And, obviously there's always incoming freshmen. There's always, transfer portal guys that you can go out and get, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if next year it's a little bit of a step back for MSU. But because I really thought, I thought if assuming we didn't lose Holloman, I thought, okay, who are you losing? Akins and Zapawa? I thought, okay, that's not that big of a deal. If you keep most of these guys, with an extra year of development for Kohler, for Cooper, et cetera, thought maybe you would be okay. But the loss of Holloman, I mean, you're going to need another guard to replace him. Huh. Oh, my dad was at that game. They're showing the December 23rd St. Louis Blues Red Wings game. When it was the final game for Derek Lalone, where the Blues won 4-0. So my dad was at that game. Yep, Red Wings game about to start. Cam Talbot starting in net. I just get like depressed watching the Red Wings. I have it on in the background, but I have absolutely no real. Oh wow, are the Blues wearing their throwbacks? Those look like throwback jerseys. Those are beautiful. Regardless of whether they're throwbacks or not, those are beautiful. Absolutely delightful. Anyway, that's pretty much the show. Not pretty much, that is the show. So, there's a little fuzz. Get out of here, fuzz. That's all I got. That's all I. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the like, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Whatever's, ask me NFL questions. I guess I'll try to answer. Talk about anything. Talk about what we talked about on the show. Talk about anything. Talk about life. I probably won't talk about life. I mean, maybe if you want to have a one-on-one conversation. I won't do a public conversation. How about that? Anyway, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe. We'll be back next Tuesday. As far as a little bit of a look ahead, there's not really anything immediately on the radar as far as, live reactions go. Barring, a Red Wings, just surge where they just go off and maybe they make the playoffs. That could be something to look out for. Obviously, with the playoffs coming in the NBA, I'm certainly going to try to live react some of those games, especially if it's Bucks Pistons, and we can get Seth back in here. That would be pretty awesome. His Milwaukee Bucks against my Detroit Pistons. That would be exciting. It'd be very emotional, I would imagine. But either way, oh wow, that's a great save from Talbot. I thought the Blues just scored, but Talbot had an amazing save. Either way, clips will be out tomorrow, and we'll be back next Tuesday to break it all down. We're coming close to the draft as well. The draft is, is it later this month? Isn't it? When is the NFL draft? Hold on. Yeah, April 24th. That's not that long. A couple of weeks here. I'm for the most part, I'm gonna probably be going live for that, but I can't be sure. That's pretty far in advance. Either way. With all that being said, I do appreciate anybody for stopping by, listening in, and hanging out. Have a good rest of your night, and I will see you all next Tuesday. Have a good night. See ya. See you later.